We are tonight's entertainment.
You can't handle the truth.
The fire rises.
Pizza time.
You're a wizard, Harry.
So it begins.
You know how much I sacrificed?
You think that's air you're breathing?
Groovy.
I don't have friends. I got family.
We are sex people! 1, 2, 3, 4!
Craft Services.
Hello, Trent.
Hello, Parth. Hi.
It's good to see you, though it's not been so long.
No, you're looking well. Yeah, we just spent some time together. And us and a third person.
Yeah, and we'll get into that.
Whose name is probably in the title of this episode.
But before we get into all of that, I'm just wondering what you've been eating most recently.
Well, we recorded the interview for whatever movie that we're talking about in this episode. Whatever boxing Rocky spin-off movie we're talking about in this episode.
Yeah, whichever one that is.
Whichever third installment. And we took a little break, and I was just going to eat some trail mix and play Fortnite, and I played 2 rounds.
I love Fortnite. Sorry.
Yeah, so do I. And then I was like, I kind of want cup of noodles right now, so I'm eating hot and spicy Firewalk sizzling rich pork flavor. And then there's like chili. There's like a chili ranking system for how spicy it is. And this is apparently 4 chilies out of 6 chilies. And the shrimp one I had a few days ago was only 1 chili.
Would you say that 4 out of 6 chilies feels right to you? Like this is
it's a good kick, but like I have a glass of water, but it's not like urgent. It's not like overwhelming or upsetting or needlessly spicy. What have you been eating?
It's good to hear. Glad you want to know. Well, just before our interview, you saw me chow down because I realized that it was going to be 2 p.m. when we started the interview, and
the time you scheduled it at.
Yeah, but I realized that I wouldn't, if I didn't eat before the interview, I wouldn't be able to eat until around 3. And so I was like, gotta eat. And so I have this like I had this P.F. Chang's like instant meal where like you put it in the microwave for like 4.5 minutes and you come out and mix it, and suddenly it's Korean pork noodles right for the eating. And they were pretty good. I liked it quite a bit.
Cool.
You know what else I liked?
I was just gonna ask you that. You wanna know what else I like? Transitioning to the intro.
Cue the intro. Welcome back to Craft Services, where we talk about the movies. Each week we talk about a film and hopefully have a crew member of that film to talk with us about their experience working on the picture. This week, who do we have, Trent?
We just talked with, just like an hour or so ago, we concluded, maybe even less.
It was 40 minutes ago, not even an hour.
Did we finish our conversation with Jahmin Assa, who's the production designer on our movie of this week, you know, Michael B. Jordan's directorial debut, Creed 3, as well as mid-90s, Jonah Hill's directorial debut, I think. And,
it is, yeah.
And the upcoming Beverly Hills Cop movie, which I didn't even know existed until a few hours ago. But he shot it and they wrapped, and it sounds super cool. And he tells us a little bit about all of the things I just mentioned.
Yes, so this is Jahmin Assa. This is going to be part 1. Again, we just recorded the interview, so we're not quite sure what's going to be in part 1 versus part 2, but he's going to talk a little bit about how he got into the film industry, what film was meant to him growing up, and how he got involved with Creed 3, meeting Michael B. Jordan, stuff like that, you know?
This is one of our latest in the game to, like, near the release date interviews. Like, if this got rescheduled, we kind of would have been screwed. Super cool episode.
Talks a little bit about Gus Van Sant.
Yes, and this is probably our best example since Top Gun. This is probably our only opening weekend release interview since Top Gun.
Since Top Gun, yes. I think was Batman close?
I was just gonna say before that was probably Batman.
And then the other one that we did very close, but didn't release it until months after for some reason was The Matrix Resurrections, which we interviewed him the day after the movie came out and didn't release it at that time for some reason.
You're talking about some of our biggest hitter interviews, both in terms of content and in terms of views.
Yeah.
People love searching that shit up once it's relevant in their
Little
mind.
SEO.
What is that?
Search engine optimization.
Yep.
Okay.
So let's hope whatever that is works in our favor.
I hope. I've given up on knowing what will make listeners listen, but you guys should listen to this episode, and if you're up to this point, you probably will. So without further ado, here's Jahmin Assa, Part 1. Hello, everybody, and welcome to our interview with Jahmin Assa. He's the production designer that's worked on Mid-90s, the upcoming Beverly Hills Cop film, and our film for today, Michael B. Jordan's Creed 3. Thank you so much for being with us today.
Thanks for having me.
So just to start off, what would you say your relationship with film was at a young age?
I think it was not as obvious, but pretty important from very young. My father was an actor, more stage actor, and did some bit parts and stuff. And there were a lot of people in the film business around, and we got to watch books and film were big in my house. So I watched a lot of inappropriate movies, which I revisited later and became big fans of from the sort of late 70s and 80s. And then just all through, I just was sort of fascinated always by film as a way to tell a story or show characters, and through a lot of the different parts of film as well. And the trickery of it all was always amazing to me.
So when was the first time you started ending up on set, and how did you gravitate towards production design?
I have like a sort of not classical way of going. I was playing a lot of sports, and I went to college to play sports, and quickly realized I was sick of being sort of yelled at and playing sports in a rigorous level, and went in to become more of an English major, and I really wanted to be a writer. And then I started, we had done, friends of mine and myself I grew up in a big, as a skating community kind of came up, and we were doing, different sort of high 8, films, and then Super 8 films, and cutting them at home. And I became obsessed with the idea of wanting to sort of write and direct. And I dropped out of school, and I came back, and the long-winded story is I was pretty good at basketball, and we used to play a lot at the park. And one of these guys who I used to pick up on my team, he was probably my age now, but was older then. And when he was like, "What the fuck are you doing? Like, you quit, you're not playing basketball?" And I was like, "No, I want to be in film." And he's like, "Oh, okay. You want to work tomorrow?" And he owned this sort of seminal, production company in Los Angeles that did a lot of music videos that were big at the time, and where a lot of filmmakers came out of, called the Oil Factory. And went to set and just loved it. I mean, loved being a runner, a PA, loved everything about it. I loved the hustle. I liked how everything was just worked as this weird machine that seemed insurmountable. And then you get, all these people lumber into a place and you figure it out. And when I left, the guy who was my boss, like the production coordinator, I guess, was like, "Do you want to keep working?" And he was working at he started working at David Lynch's office for asymmetrical films when he had this little company, and they were in between. It was when he had broke up with his partner on Twin Peaks, and it was just an amazing learning process, because he was he's not by the book and sort of wonderful. So I'd be filming castings, I'd be driving him while he was composing music. We'd be putting together these sort of storyboards, and, back before this is prior to the digital age, and we were researching all these books, and it was this really small family environment that was really great. And that was sort of it. And then my girlfriend at the time was a photographer who's still a dear friend, and she was going to Art Center in Pasadena. And I just started hanging out, and they go to school, when you're working like in anything you love, they were working like 80 hours a week. So we'd show up there, after the start of school and drink beer. And then I started sitting in on all the classes and watching all the Tarkovsky films and and like building up and learning composition. And I just started everyone in that world. What was so beautiful, and I wish I had done it in a more formal way, was, if the three of us are photography majors or film majors, at a certain point, it's like, okay, you're going to be in it. Okay, you're going to light it. Like, we'll bring some furniture from your mom's house and we'll do a scene, right? Because everyone has to participate, and you have limited resources and bodies and people that are willing to do it. And so we just started doing that for this sort of small crew of friends that were working really hard. And then we started making little Super 8 films and cutting them at home with the tape, and without really knowing what we were doing. And it just kept sort of building like that and I was doing some fashion stuff and this, and I just missed being in film. And I was in New York, and I came back to Los Angeles and just started PAing, and then realized like I knew what I was doing already, if that makes sense. Like I knew we had sort of figured out through all our mistakes, all the stuff, and met a few friends who were doing really well on these really thoughtful, imaginative, wild, and quirky, surreal, for as many adjectives as I can fit in there, commercials, and with these amazing DPs. And I slowly sort of, started doing my own jobs that way with all these directors over the years. And then I had a son and a daughter, so I just wanted to stay local. So commercials were kind of this great way where you could make a living, but also experiment and start to work, and go all over the world, actually. But we do a lot in LA and work with, all these fantastic, I've become good friends with a lot of the DPs who are all our heroes. And a lot of it's because they would sort of in between be doing commercials, to films. And I didn't know how to sort of break into what I was going to do a film. Like, I didn't want to put forth that much effort to just do a movie to do a movie. Like, I was a little older than, whereas I was just like, oh, whatever, I had to make enough money. And a dear friend from those commercials who does a lot of films called me and asked me if I wanted to do a film with Gus Van Sant. And I didn't even ask any questions, because he's one of my early heroes for a lot of reasons: his experimentation, his seminal movies, his ideas. And we did this wonderful movie, and it went really well, I thought, for what our resources and everything were, even besides that. And that just sort of led to, okay, Jonah Hill was in that movie. We talked.
I didn't even make that connection to mid-90s.
Yeah,
that makes sense.
It was kind of crazy. And so, in the driveway, he's like, hey, how you doing? And like, I'm a huge fan. And I was like, well, I'm a huge fan of your script. I had read it the year before, when they were going to do it the year before, and it didn't get made. And we just started talking, and the next thing you know, I was sort of doing Don't Worry, He Won't Get Far on Foot, and towards the end, we're prepping mid-90s. So they went pretty close to back, and it was a super lesson again on how to do things, how not to do things, and I think that there's a big lesson and stuff for that for a lot of people, which I miss, which is once you know how to do things or how they're supposed to be done, then you kind of lose a lot of the magic, because, and Gus is still a kid like that. And Jonah sort of came from learning from him, really paying attention at that point. So it becomes sort of more like a family, and there's not a lot of like, we can't do that because that's not the way it's done. Which happens a lot on, which I've learned on certain, other films and projects, where there's a way, like, this is how we do this. And then you're like, yeah, well, I don't know if I really like that, and if we can afford that. And so what's our other alternative?
I was going to bring up Don't Worry, He Won't Get Far on Foot, just because on IMDb, that's your first credited film. Yeah. And I was like, that's crazy that like your first movie is with Gus Van Sant.
Yeah, it was amazing.
I was just gonna say, you've really burst onto the scene doing a crazy range of movies over the past 5 years. I'm sure you've noticed that as well.
Yeah, it was important to me. Again, going back, commercials in a weird way, you work really hard, you work really fast, they're super imaginative. They're super experimental in a weird way. I know that doesn't make sense. Like this one that I'm working on is not, but it's like how you can try out and do things in a really quick way. And we build all the worlds and when I went to do films, I wanted to do films that I like. And so far I haven't done a film that like I don't like, or that there wasn't an intention behind doing it. And so I've been really blessed with that. And, I've sparsed them out, and I'm lucky that I do commercials in between because I still enjoy them, but that they can kind of, I can keep my living going. And, it's been cool. Like, so now that's the big question is like, what do we go to next? Right. Is always like what to do.
And how were you introduced to the Creed 3 people and Michael B. Jordan, and how'd you get brought on board for that?
Creed 3, I think the first one is my dear friend Bradford Young, who's a wonderful DP. And we've done a lot of weird, interesting, fun projects together and become dear friends. They were chatting about the movie, and he said, "Man, you got to read this script." And then kind of said the same thing, I think, to Michael, like, "Man, you got to hire this dude." And it was sort of a left field thing, and I loved the script, was fantastic. Like, and we met, and then we met about 6 times. And I'm big on research, and Michael's big on research and exacting and really understanding stuff. He's not casual about everything that he wants to do. So I think it was very important, and it was lucky. We got to converse a lot in those first meetings, and feel each other out about what was the, it's a big word for me. Like, what's your intention? Like, and it can be anything. It doesn't have to be some grand philosophical, existential film about, but why you want to do it. And we talked a lot about it and why he was doing it and his ideas. And then I fought hard for it. And there was a simpatico nature between, we really got along well. And so I think it made it easy, for him to choose me.
So did you make like a lookbook, and what sort of, you said you're big on research. So what kind of like influences were you pulling from for this movie?
It's a strange thing and I'm newer to it than a lot of people who have done, so many movies, but I've interviewed and talked to a lot of people. Some I haven't wanted to do, some they haven't chose me, but you sometimes are sent a script, and if you like it, then they want to meet pretty quickly, and you haven't met the director per se. Now there's more directors, and it's like we've worked together on stuff and we have a shorthand. But if I haven't met you guys and you're like, "Here's this script," I'm like, "That's great," and they're like, they want to meet and they want to see some stuff. It's a really awkward position to be in, and some of mine went way too exhaustive. All of a sudden, like, I'm meeting with you guys and I have like a 45-page thing of all these ideas. Some are just vibes. Some are, a palm tree on fire. Some are, some of these paintings, which I just really love the color. I try to pull from a lot of film reference first, and see what I can see that sort of is just a guide as opposed to doing it exact. And I found that I don't know why, but without being specific on like, this is a palette, the palette sort of comes, into it. And we used there was a few paintings, that had this dark red, sort of muted dark red, dark green, black, boxers sort of almost like tackling each other, wrestling. And I really went off that. And then a lot of the, sort of 90s Los Angeles, there's a bunch of I like a lot of photographers too. There's a lot of photographers out of Los Angeles. They're starting to get some recognition from like my time, 80s, 90s, even contemporary street photographers. And we started to go, okay, are we trying to make a Michael Mann movie? No. Okay, cool. Here's what we're doing. Like, we really want to honor sort of this guy's journey to Africa. Wait, did you guys see the movie?
Parth saw it yesterday.
Yeah, I saw it on Wednesday.
Cool.
I saw it in IMAX, which was very cool.
Did you enjoy it?
Oh, I had a great time with it. Trent and I have a mutual friend, Jackson, and I saw it with him. And at several points, we would turn to each other and like nod.
Yeah.
So it's pretty awesome.
Yeah. So that was, then we, what was really interesting on, Michael was a great collaborator, and he had a lot of specifics of points he wanted to hit, but then he was wide open to how do we get to these points. And we started really talking, and the way it reads and the way it was, it's almost like, how do we make this like a noir film? And for lack of a better picture, how do we make it all where it's really cinematic, where when I was location scouting, every single thing has a lot of depth and almost like good indie movies, but it's also a superhero movie. It's also big, Creed, Rocky, whole thing. And, so I started doing some sketches and drawings of Dodger Stadium. There's never been a fight there. And at the end, and he would send me these explaining these fights, and I couldn't understand. And then it would be this 2-minute anime clip would come like in the chat right now. And it was and I'm not so well versed on anime, and a lot of that stuff. And it was incredible. And I was like, oh, I get it. And then we fought, I wanted to have it be really simplistic in the ring because there's so much business and noise in boxing with ads and stuff. And so we really bordered it where we went like, oh, at the beginning, it's a black ring. It's the end of retirement, the whole thing. And then for the last one, white on white, which is a challenge for a DP shooting darker skinned, beautiful guys on this white on white ring, right? All of a sudden it's like a giant bounce. And, and then the middle was just like the middle. It was like the blues and reds. But, we had a way where it was like, a lot of Delphi we went on where it was red. And then Jonathan Major's character was more green. And we started referencing, and from Michael's producer and Michael, Liz Raposo, who was wonderful. We started talking about it's like old Westerns. And we started watching Westerns like, the old gunslinger comes to town, like back to town, like the villain. And how do we keep it stoic like that? And, it's just crazy. It's kind of amazing to be able to do. I like American dramas. If we're going to find what I really love. And it's not often anymore that you get to do a big sort of American drama or just big drama, like on the screen with all that action. And so I think we pulled it off pretty good. But I sort of delved away from your reference question and went on a whole tangent.
No, that was great. You answered some other questions we wanted to ask.
I have a little bit of a reference question. Are you looking at the other Creed movies and Rocky movies and trying to do some sort of, variation on that? Or are you trying to stay far away from those and like not even have those in your mind when creating this? Or is it like, because it's a whole new thing and a whole new settings, like it doesn't apply?
We definitely, I've seen up until I've watched Rocky 1 to 4, probably in the last sort of however long this has been, last few years. I'd seen them all. They were my childhood's favorite movies. Like Rocky 3 was like I went to see in Philadelphia. It was one of my huge favorite movies because I was like, I don't know what year that came out. I must have been 13 or something, 12, maybe. My grandfather took me, downtown Center City. The music was amazing. Mr. T comes out. It felt like one of the first movies where you get to see that's your thing, like your choice. It's not like, oh, I'm going to see a movie with my parents, or it's a kid's movie, or it's, or I don't really understand it. And later you love the movie. But so you reference, it's strange, right? Because that was the first thing I've ever done that has a past that people know. So all of a sudden you have to watch, Creed 1 and 2, like a lot. And then you have to understand the Rocky movies too, to kind of, there's a way that they did it, that was really successful. And I think sometimes you can get lost on that. And then like Creed with Ryan Coogler really brought it back to all the great essences, looks wise, feelings wise, like all the meat of what makes the Rocky franchise incredible and all the great themes. And I really liked Creed 1 a lot. And excuse me, you know, we wanted to make it all new. So it's kind of like, oh, can he be in a new gym? So we kind of justify that so that it's like, because he's a champion now. So then we didn't have to match it per se, you know, exactly. Can this be here? How can we make him, you know, a long time's passed. He's got $100 million now or whatever, you know, we're like, what's he worth? 200 million, right? So socioeconomically, everything has to change. He's also like, it's a big deal to be like 32 or whatever he is in the movie, as opposed to like 25 or 28, right? You keep changing. So we took all that into account. And the most, I mean, maybe you'll ask that, but the hardest part for me is I'm from Los Angeles. I love Los Angeles. I know Los Angeles really well. Like we've scouted a zillion commercials. Plus I just like sort of whatever city I'm in, I like to get lost and see every sort of nook and cranny. And, you know, we had to shoot, all of a sudden we're shooting this movie and then they're like, cool, we're going to do it. I'm like, okay, great. And then they're like, and we're shooting it in Atlanta. And I'm like, Atlanta doesn't fucking look like Los Angeles. Atlanta looks great, but it doesn't look like LA. And, Brian, the location manager, who was wonderful, and I worked really hard. We scouted LA first for like a lot of exteriors, like what's necessary, what's not. And then we started shooting Atlanta, like what can we do that even represents a little bit of Los Angeles. And then we got to build a lot on stage. And between the three, it sort of carved its way out.
Yeah, I was going to ask, because you brought up the socioeconomic factors, watching this movie, that's a crazy house that he has. And I wanted to ask about like designing that house, because they've got the see-through floors. It's crazy.
Yeah. That little section right there, we shot on location, and we wanted a modern house. I had a ton of references of where he should be in Los Angeles and with this view, right? The whole thing. But then monetarily in time, they were like, we'll shoot these on a location. And we found one house that's newly built, because the modern work, like if you get into sort of types of houses, modern is not an Atlanta thing. It's new in the South. There's not a lot of famous in Midwest. There's a lot of great of that sort of mid-century modern, amazing architects. Los Angeles, there's a ton. The South, it's just coming on. And we found this one house that was brilliant for that little entryway. And we wanted to showcase a lot of different art, which we got to do with the Astor Gates, Charles White, and all this, you know, sort of, and Michael's mom has a great painting in there. And then we built that whole man cave and her studio. We built all that on stage. And it sort of, I feel like it worked together pretty seamlessly, no?
I was going to say, I didn't realize one was a location and one was a stage, or like parts of it. It was like broken up. I didn't notice that at all.
Yeah. That's cool. You know, we get kind of specific, like there's some movies that like I said, I read the script and it's kind of interesting now, like that are coming out now that I met with and either they didn't want to do or I didn't want to do. And it's really funny when I was going back to our research and lookbook. So you can see a movie after doing, like, say my wife will read the script, I'll read the script, I put together a lookbook, and I'll decide it's going to be very like brutal, like cements, like built within the ground, you know, this whole situation, all the colors, the vibes. And then you won't do the movie. And it's very funny when you see the movie and it's good, but it's really hard to watch because it's kind of different than how you had pitched to sort of do it, you know?
Right.
Yeah. And so Creed was kind of the same. It was really difficult. We finally found this one house, and then it was really interesting matching our downstairs to their upstairs, but being able to keep all of our stuff, like our honeycombed sort of, you know, the ceiling in her studio, and the different lighting and ceiling fixtures and mics. We put this anime on the back of Afro Samurai, and that was it. There's a lot of other things that were really fun. Like I've never been a big photo mural guy, but on this one I felt like I wanted him to always feel like, especially like downstairs there, that great huge, and he was sort of humble, like I don't really want pictures of me everywhere, but there's this great like imposing strong, so Adonis, but as Adonis looking down, and like even when he's vulnerable, it's always like behind him, or when Damien's there, it's always behind him. And then at his his gym, to have that his dad on the wall, with this sort of saying and everything, and this sort of affirmation that it's almost like you can't get rid of, you know what I mean? It's almost like little haunting notes, which seem to work out pretty good.
So our friend who's mentioned Jackson Clark, he had a celebrity question, and he said that he's never seen IMAX cameras move so smoothly, and that they're like usually stationary, and we were wondering if shooting in IMAX changes your approach as a production designer at all.
It's interesting because the DP and I, who got on fantastic, Kramer Morgenthau, who I think he's taking over like IMAX Instagram to talk about that this week in a real technical way, which is kind of interesting. And he's also a lovely dude if you want to talk. He's done some really cool stuff for a long time. But they were ingenious. And what happens is it's only in the framing, and it's different if you're doing certain things. It's more the fights were what we had to really protect for, and that became less about me. Once I got my ring and the color of it, and we battled about the artistic sort of what you see as lighting, you know what I mean? Like one of the things we wanted to do also that they were like, what the fuck are you talking about? Mike and I had talked about, it's at Dodger Stadium. Well, if it's at Dodger Stadium and I drew a picture with like 150,000 people in there, or did a rendering, there's nowhere to put the usual truss that goes above the ring, right? Which is how those guys are lit so beautifully. So how do you do it? And they're like, it's impossible. And it's a white on white ring. And it's a Dodger Stadium, but we have to shoot all the fights on stage before we go to Dodger Stadium. So they were, it was beastly for what they had to do. And Josh Davis's gaffer. And we found a picture in an old Muhammad Ali stadium of where the stadium lights did it. And, when it comes to that, I'm just like, I think it should look like this. You know what I mean? I don't have to actually go put those lights up, and they're not 400 yards away. They're 50 or 60 feet because the limits of a stage, right? You only have so much space on a stage. And they were wonderful. Mike Heathcote, the Steadicam, Steadicam operator, is like a dancer, and it was incredible. But to go back to your question, it was harder actually for us. IMAX just kind of opens up. So I've always I learned of the school of you sort of have to have the world ready, for when they frame it up, because you kind of give it away. So it's like, you don't necessarily, if it's just the three of us doing a small project, we're there and we're kind of talking, but you have to you're on to the next part of it. And mid-90s was the beast. Because mid-90s was, now with Instagram and now with that, to shoot it, it was shot like in basically a square format, right? So if I frame like how we're all looking at each other now, and there's some symmetry, and Captain Watterson's sitting on the couch, and I'm like, this looks fucking great. It's like we found all this stuff that's like 80s, so it doesn't feel 90s, but it's all this clean sort of palette, like monochromatic sort of, vanilla lifestyle. And then all of a sudden, Blauvelt lines up, and it's just a square, so you don't know where you're cutting off. It was that was more challenging for me on the daily.
Parth, what an interview.
Thank you so much to Jahmin Assa. I think that was a pretty good interview, huh?
And that's only the first half. You kids and adults wait around until next week, where we'll have part 2, the remainder of the conversation. If you liked the first half, stick around. And after that, you'll get we already have ironed out who our discussion guests will be. Maybe we won't reveal it yet. Maybe it's a familiar face. Maybe it's someone who got mentioned in the interview. If you have an eagle ear, maybe they've been on the show before.
Maybe they have been the person that's been on the show most, other than Trent and I.
And it isn't isn't dating us, because I feel like Sophia's pretty close. Not in terms of episodes.
I would say
but in terms of,
Jordan has had the most episodes.
No, more than Sophia.
I feel like Jordan's been on like intros way more.
I guess
because like when you two are like together all the time, and so like she'll just be in the corner, and then you'll be like, "Hey, Jordan, come on in."
Maybe she's made more individual appearances, but the mystery guest, I believe, has been on 4 discussion episodes, and this could be his 5th, which is a big moment for all of us here and everywhere. And speaking of, you should tell your friends about the show. It really does help. Spotify, Apple Podcasts, wherever you get your podcasts. That's where you can find us.
Yes, and we have an Instagram and a Twitter. Go check out our social media. Follow us there for updates. And thank you so much to Jahmin Assa for talking with us. We're going to have part 2 up next week.
Yep.
And he's going to talk more about really specific scenes, his influences a little bit deeper. And it's... I may be biased. This might be recency bias, but I think this is one of our better interviews in a while.
Yeah, it was very engaging, very exciting to talk about something so near the release. He just saw a screening, so it's fresh on his mind.
And to be doing an intro for an interview we had just done. I feel like because we backlog these interviews, the hype we have surrounding them is kind of gone because we're doing an intro for an episode we recorded months prior.
And like you mentioned, given our interviews are conducted so far apart these days, each one, since you haven't done it in like a month and a half, sort of feels like you've never done an interview before. And so I had nerves, like I was a little young podcaster again. Yeah. But I think we persevered.
We did indeed, and we'll persevere all the way to next week.
He listened to some of our episodes. Thanks.
He did. Ruth Young and Sam Lysenko episodes. Go check out our Nope and Judas and the Black Messiah interviews.
If you're a production designer head, which I'm sure there are a lot of you out there, really specific interests.
Guys, at the end of the day, we had an enemy, and somehow Team Deacons returned. And we just need you...
This isn't how I thought this
to help
gonna
beat them into submission, is all I'm saying.
I thought we had them. They stopped releasing episodes, and I was like, they may have started before us, but we're going to outstand them. But they were just resting and becoming more powerful.
But just remember that they left you, and we never did. You know?
Yeah.
At the end of the day, we will always be there.
Our longest break was just like a few weeks out of negligence, but theirs was intentional.
Yeah, he was off busy filming, working.
Parth, wonder who the real enemy is? The Directors Guild of America podcast.
All right.
I actually really like that podcast.
Yeah, so do I.
And it's not that much like ours, so maybe we can coexist. But Team Deacons, watch your back.